15 years ago, you would have wanted to eat that hippo because
you
ate some exotic animals, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So for those of you who read my book, there is a chapter. Well, actually, the first third of the book, the first book, The Skeptical Vegan, was about how much of an omnivore with strong carnivorous leanings I was for the first half, maybe third, if I lived to be 120-ish. The first third of my life, I was eating animals. I was unapologetic about it. It was part of my culture. It was part of my upbringing. It was part of my everyday. And Alexandra, you're almost half joking about me eating a hippo because I ate a lot of weird and exotic animals and thought nothing of it. And so at, I think, around age of 42 or 43, I made the switch overnight to 100% plant-based vegan diet and haven't looked back. So yeah, I wouldn't eat a hippo today. I would love to get a hippo hug, though.
Sounds like that's dangerous, though.
You were, but I mean, you're not just your average meat eater, because in one sitting you ate 68 chicken wings. So you were a meat eater and proud of it.
Yeah, that seems impossible to me now, because when you do the math on 68 chicken wings, you realize exactly how many chickens that is. And the person who was with me also ate 68 chicken wings. It was an all-you-can-eat chicken wing and all-you-can-drink beer
68
event.
chickens total.
Yeah, well, it's 34 chickens,
right? But both of you did it.
Oh, yeah. Sorry,
So,
yes, of course, yeah.
That's a lot of lives.
It seems very grim to me. And part of, I mentioned in my first book, again, about transitioning to a vegan diet, part of it was this epiphany I had. I happened to be in New York City. I was sitting on a bus on my way back to upstate, and I looked out the window, and this was when I was probably vegan for maybe a month, and I looked out the window and I saw someone eating meat off a wing. And that was the first, off a bone, I'm sorry. It was the first time I had seen someone watch them tearing meat off a bone. And it was one of those moments of, what was I thinking? How did I do that? How do people continue to do that? When you talk about an evolution, we are clearly going to evolve away from being a species that chews meat off of other animals' bones. That doesn't make any sense to me anymore. It's very, very caveman-like to me at this point. But at one point, that was who I was.
I think any time that we get close enough, Dr. Neil Bernard was on, and remember he told us about, he stopped eating ribs, not all meat, but ribs, when he had to go in and work on the cadaver and cut his rib cage open and look at the clogged arteries. And so, but it wasn't even the clogged arteries. Yes, that's all from all the butter in the meat. It was literally opening up someone's rib cage, and that was like, those are ribs. And he said, I couldn't eat another rib after I walked out of that afternoon.
Yeah, he was looking at it another way.
Right. If we allow ourselves to just get close enough to what the reality is and what it actually is, it's powerful.
Yeah, I agree.
How is your health? Because you even had a website called meatbucket.com where you
we have to talk about that.
Yeah, we have to talk about that. So I don't know, you want to talk about meatbucket.com, or do you want to talk what a vibrant, healthy man you were eating all that meat?
It's so embarrassing now. Meatbucket.com. It was a short-lived idea to sell literally buckets of meat, dried meats and things like that. And again, at that time in my life, I had zero thought about those being animals, those being sentient beings.
Right.
That this bucket was filled with corpses. That whole thing just didn't register in my mind at all, which, by the way, and a lot of what you do with Switch4Good, and I'm hoping to do both through my books and my work with Compassion Over Killing, a lot of this is hitting people where they are and letting them make their own discoveries on their own. Because I could preach this to many, many people, and they're never going to make that connection with me telling them to make the connection. It's when these things are suddenly, as you said, Dotsie, when you suddenly change your perspective, you change your own way of looking at these things, that it changes everything around you. And so all of those past events, all of the past dietary choices I made were finally catching up with me. And I was at a point where I knew I had to make a change, and I didn't ever in a million years think it would be as radical seeming at the time as going vegan. And I can tell you that within the first month of struggling, I called it struggling, it doesn't seem like it now, struggling with a vegan and plant-based diet, after the first month had passed, I started to already feel, I can't think of a better word other than cleansed. I started to feel lighter. And even if I wasn't losing weight, even if I wasn't getting all the promises that I was thinking I was going to get by giving up all of those bad foods, I could tell that I was on the right track. And so within that first year, again, as a man in his early to middle age, my doctor's visits were suddenly a turning point. Everything was completely different. The weight that I had lost, my cholesterol level, the doctors were looking at my chart saying, whatever you're doing, keep doing it.
Can you be specific about any of that for our listeners?
I had lost 30 pounds at 4 belt buckle loops at one point. I've since discovered there's a lot more good vegan junk food now. So I don't want to talk about that because that's my new addiction. But at the time, it was a weight loss that felt great. It was I was no longer like winded. Little things like to a doctor because I said I feel winded after climbing a flight of stairs, thinking there was something that was wrong with me. Yet the thing that was wrong with me was I was eating poorly and I weighed too much. And so I was just putting a strain on my body. Not quite. No, I just avoided that. Okay. I feel like I hit that at the right point because I'm at an age now, having been vegan for 8 years, I'm at a point now where my friends are starting to be on medications. Yeah. When you get to your mid-50s, you see them starting to say, hey, if I just take this, I can eat whatever I want. Or I just take one of these a day and I'm going to be fine, as opposed to making just a really smart decision on changing your diet.
Mm-hmm. So was it your weight that when you say, I knew I had to change something, what was it that was compelling you to even go in this direction after loving so much?
Yeah, your aha moment.
Yeah, well, that's the bet that I refuse to lose, right?
But you said before you were thinking about it. I want to talk about how you actually made the change, but you hinted that you were sort of feeling like something was not right.
Well, again, I think just the way you feel. You feel heavier, you feel less active, you feel less vibrant. All of the things that just sort of you start to feel like you're dragging around a little bit. And then when I was provided an opportunity to challenge myself with a whole new dietary change, it was me just sort of like thinking, what the heck, I might as well do it now. Again, thinking at that point, Alexandra, that it was going to be 30 days. The first part of me going vegan was loosely based on Colleen Patrick Goudreau's book of the 30-Day Vegan Challenge. And so I just thought I'd make it through 30 days. I'd feel great. I'd reintroduce a couple of things here and there and just look back at that as a lesson, not realizing not only how it would change my entire health, like my person, but my entire career, my whole life just completely changed with the book deals, the YouTube channel, and a career in animal protection that, I never in a million years would have dreamt 9 years ago.
So tell us about this bet and how you went from happy but not so happy, a little overweight carnivore to a vegan overnight.
All right. So my wife has celiac. So she was already on a restricted diet. She was wheat-free. And she was suffering from what I like to call lactose denial syndrome. So she didn't know that she shouldn't be drinking milk and eating cheese and things like that. She just knew it didn't make her feel great. And so she came home with a copy of Colleen's book and said, I'm thinking of going vegan for 30 days. And that was the real moment of my life where things changed, because to this day, I don't know why I just said, I'll do it with you. Just being supportive husband. Obviously we were sharing the household, so we'd be sharing meals. I do a lot of cooking. And so I thought this would be a good way to sort of change some of those habits, change my kitchen, my rapport in the kitchen. And so I thought, well, let's just do it. We'll do 30 days and we'll both see how we feel. And so that was on January 7th of 2012. And so I went to bed the night before having eaten chicken wings. And I woke up the next morning wondering if I was having to eat quinoa or, kale for breakfast or some weird food, right? So I followed Colleen's book sort of on a day-to-day basis to see what to expect. I was wondering why I wasn't feeling all that different. I was saying, like, why aren't there more options for vegan foods in things like vending machines? I kind of felt like I was supposed to be eating in a vending machine for some reason, or at a gas station. Like, you go to a gas station and these things are going around on a conveyor and there's nothing there. I mean, there might be today, actually. Things have changed that much in this shorter period of time, but there was nothing there for a vegan or for a plant-based person. So I felt all of that whole first 30 days was me just grumbling and griping. And that's when I started my blog called The Meaty Vegan. So I thought I was going to document how I would never stay vegan. And so those first 30 days were supposed to be me just proving that veganism is not the way to go, and that this diet is restrictive, and that I was having more fun as a meat eater. And so we made it through the first 30 days. And on the 31st day, I thought my wife was going to crack. I thought she was going to eat cheese. I thought for sure she was going to run right out, buy a block of cheese, and start in, and then she and I could just get right back into it. And so I asked her on the 31st day, I said, so what do you want to do from here? And she's like, well, I feel good. You feel good. Let's, maybe you want to keep it going. And I said, well, let's make it interesting. Let's turn this into a bet. I'll bet you will eat cheese before I will eat anything that's not vegan. At that point, it probably would have been meat. But it became the bet that, again, 8 years later, I refused to lose. So through all of that, I never once turned back. I never once cheated or have those, cheat days that some people talk about. I actually got rid of all of my non-vegan clothes. Like, I had some really nice silk shirts that I loved. I got rid of my leather belts, my leather sneakers, my leather coats. I wanted to be all in. If I was going to go vegan, as I understood it at that point, I wanted to not be called out. I wanted people to understand that I was being serious about this. So I did it, and I'm still vegan. She's still vegan. We're raising 2 vegan kids, which was the reason for the second book coming out, which, by the way, Dr. Bernard wrote the foreword for.
Right.
And so it's this bet that, again, when you ask me, what did you actually bet? That's where the whole thing is sort of like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I can't believe the bet was that small. So it was if you lost the bet, you would have to watch the other person clean the house for 3 months. So you're sort of off duty for having to clean the house, but you also have to be watched by the other person. So it was a little tiny bet, but it turned into, again, something that totally changed my life.
Everybody is hearing that, there was this bet and you weren't feeling all that awesome anyway, and you began feeling a lot better after the 30 days. But there's a big difference between changing your food and changing your entire house and wardrobe. There had to, or maybe not, but was there some kind of soulful connection? Like, what was that journey that really made you throw away those leather coats or take them to the Salvation Army? Yeah, there's more there.
Well, there's those epiphanies, Dotsie, that there's things that I was observing. I'm an introspective person, like I'm an artist. I sort of look at things maybe a little bit differently. And so when, during the first 30 days or a couple of months of trying a vegan diet, I live in upstate New York, and there are cows everywhere peppering the hills. Mm-hmm. And I can remember like stopping and looking at the cows and saying, they're like big dogs, like they're no different than pets to me. Now, I'm just looking at them and saying they have as much of a right to life as any being on this planet. It's that whole speciesism thing that I feel like these cows want to be left alone, and they obviously don't want to be bred. They don't want to be, tortured for milk, of course, for human consumption. And so along the way, I started to make that connection. That's what vegans call it, is making the connection. And so I don't know if there was one moment, I don't know if there was a handful of moments, but it definitely started to feel right to me. It started to feel like I was onto something. And now in hindsight, I definitely was. I mean, besides, again, all of the positive changes in my life, I really think that the future is vegan. And I think that I got in there at the right time. I got in there right before the good vegan cheeses came out. In fact, if you read my first book, most of what's in there in terms of availability of vegan options is completely outdated. And the book is 3 years old. So much has changed in a handful of years to make it a ridiculous notion right now, in my mind, why anyone would consume dairy first and foremost, and then meat. Why would you ever do that? And then eggs, So I think, again, looking back, it was a good network, a good community.
Sure.
You guys live somewhere where you do have a big community, a big sort of vegan availability. There's the East Coast, West Coast thing. We've got these pockets of a lot of. We have 30 vegan friends. We'll host a vegan Thanksgiving, and as many as 30 vegans will show up in a small town like Ithaca, New York. So having a community behind us was a big part of it. Knowing we weren't alone. For those of you who are listening. Find a community. If it's an online community or if it's one or two friends in a town nearby, if there's no one directly where you live, that definitely helps. I mean, we definitely had a good support network.